I was Beyoncé's vocal coach, and the voice that came out of her that day, it wasn't human. What happened in that studio wasn't a trick, a vocal technique, or a fluke. No, it was something far darker, something otherworldly. You think you know Beyoncé? But I was there when she became a vessel for something that shouldn't even exist. This is the story you've never heard. When I first met Beyoncé, I thought I was just there to teach her how to sing better, help her refine what she already had. I'd worked with stars before, but nothing prepared me for her presence. It wasn't just her talent. There was something magnetic about her, something untouchable. From the moment she walked into the studio, I knew I wasn't dealing with an ordinary singer. The studio itself felt different when she arrived, like the air around her thickened, charged with this invisible force. I was accustomed to working with professionals, but Beyoncé, she was on another level. I tried not to show it, but I could feel the weight of it. Her voice was unreal, almost too perfect for a human to possess. She didn't even have to try. When she sang, it was like the room would hold its breath. I remember the first warm-up session like it was yesterday. It was a simple scale, something any other singer could breeze through. But when she hit the high note, something in the room shifted. It wasn't just the sound, it was the feeling. I couldn't explain it. The vibration of the note filled the air, but there was a strange weight to it. It didn't feel right. It felt unnatural. At first, I thought it was a fluke. I thought maybe she was just tired, or maybe I was overthinking things. But then, during the next song, it happened again. There was a presence in her voice, something deeper, darker, and more powerful than I could have anticipated. I could feel it crawling up my spine as she sang. It was like she was channeling something, but what? And how? I didn't know what to make of it, so I tried to remain professional. I gave her feedback, told her she was doing fine, but deep down, I knew something wasn't adding up. She was hitting notes that were beyond impressive, insane even. It wasn't just her technical ability, there was an energy behind it that I couldn't ignore. After the session, I asked if she was okay. She seemed fine, even relaxed. I remember her giving me a smile, thanking me for the session, and then walking out of the room. But as she left, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had just shifted. There was an unease I couldn't shake. I'd coached enough singers to know that no one sounded like that. No one could channel such power without it taking a toll. Something didn't feel right, but I couldn't place what it was. As I sat there in the studio, replaying the session in my mind, I thought back to her presence, how she seemed almost too composed, like she had everything under control, or maybe something else had control. I had no proof, no reason to believe it wasn't just my nerves. But the more I thought about it, the more it felt like I had seen something I shouldn't have. Maybe it was just the pressure of working with someone of her stature. Maybe I was imagining things. But I couldn't ignore the feeling that something about that session had been off. Something deep inside me told me that I wasn't just witnessing talent. Something darker was at play. But that wasn't the worst part. That was just the beginning. The next few weeks with Beyoncé were a whirlwind. She was always professional, always gracious. But something about the energy in the studio kept eating at me. It wasn't just her presence anymore. It was the way she moved, the way she sang. There were moments, brief but undeniable, when I could feel something extraordinary in the room, something unnatural. It started with the way she'd hit certain notes, notes that to any other singer would be impossible to sustain. She made it seem effortless, but there was an odd weight to the air when she did it. The sound she produced wasn't just beautiful, it was haunting. I remember one session. I asked her to hold a note longer than usual. When she did, the room seemed to pulse with it. The walls felt alive, trembling with each sound that left her lips. It was as if the room itself was reacting to her voice, as though it couldn't contain the power she was unleashing. But what really unsettled me was when I started noticing subtle changes in her behavior. It wasn't drastic at first, but there was a shift. Beyoncé was always focused, always in control, but there were moments when she seemed distant, gone. It was as though she was there physically, but her mind, her essence, was somewhere else entirely. In those moments, when her eyes lost that sharp focus and glazed over, I started to wonder who or what was really in control. I remember one particular session where I could feel a coldness creep into the room. It wasn't from the AC. It wasn't just a draft. It was something else. As Beyoncé began to sing, I noticed her body shift. It wasn't anything drastic, just a slight tilt of her head. But then her eyes flickered, just for a second. There was a flash in them, something dark, and for the briefest moment, she didn't seem like herself. It wasn't fear I felt, not exactly. It was more like recognition. Like I knew something was happening, but I couldn't quite place it. Her voice, too, was beginning to change. At first, it was just subtle. A slight shift in tone, nothing too noticeable. But over time, it grew harder to ignore. One afternoon, while she was doing a vocal exercise, I asked her to repeat a particular phrase. The moment she opened her mouth, I felt it again. The room thickened with a pressure I couldn't explain. But this time, it wasn't just the power of her voice. There was something else, an underlying current. It was as if a second, darker voice was underneath hers. A growl, a hiss, something I had never heard in any human voice. It was like she was channeling something that was trying to get out. I stopped her mid-note, asking if she was okay. She blinked, shook her head, and apologized, explaining that she had felt a bit distracted, that she had lost focus. She brushed it off as if it were nothing, but I couldn't ignore the feeling in the pit of my stomach. Something was wrong. Something was changing. As the days passed, I noticed the changes becoming more frequent. Each session felt heavier, as if we were wading deeper into uncharted territory. Her singing was becoming incredible, yes, but it was also becoming more dangerous. It wasn't just about technique anymore. There was something about the way she sang, something that bent the laws of what was humanly possible. Then came the day I could no longer ignore it. I asked Beyoncé to run through a new song we had been working on for the past few weeks. She stood at the microphone, ready. Her back was straight, her posture perfect. She took a deep breath, and I signaled her to begin. What came out of her mouth wasn't just powerful. It wasn't just perfect. It was inhuman. The first few notes were like a symphony of raw power, but then something else started to emerge. I felt a weight in my chest. It was as though the very air in the studio was shifting, moving in rhythm with her voice. And then came the moment. As she hit one of the high notes, her voice didn't just reach it, it broke it. It felt as if she was tearing through the limits of her vocal range and beyond. The sound that left her throat vibrated through my bones. But it wasn't a human sound. It wasn't even a sound I could place. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, my breath catching. It wasn't just the sound that unnerved me. It was the feeling. I looked at her, and for a moment, she wasn't there. Her eyes were unfocused, distant, like she was somewhere else entirely. It was like her body was present, but her soul had drifted away. When she finished the note, the room went completely silent. Too silent. I didn't know what to say. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. My mind raced, trying to rationalize what I'd just heard, what I'd just witnessed. Was this a trick? Was she playing some sort of game? But I could see it in her eyes. She had no idea what had just happened. I cleared my throat, trying to keep my composure. "Beyoncé," I said, forcing a smile. "That was incredible. But are you feeling okay?" She blinked, snapping out of the trance-like state she had fallen into. "Yeah," she replied, shaking her head as if trying to wake herself up. "I'm fine. Just a little tired, I guess." But I knew something else was going on. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't just teaching a voice. I was teaching a vessel that was beginning to channel something beyond comprehension. I thought I was just witnessing a breakthrough in her career. But what I didn't know was that I was about to discover something far more horrifying, something that would change everything I thought I knew about Beyoncé. The days after that session felt different. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed, something deep inside Beyoncé. It wasn't just her voice, it was everything, her presence, her energy. There were moments when she seemed more like a stranger than the person I had spent months working with. The sessions were becoming more intense, but there was an undeniable weight to them now, like we were diving into a dark current that neither of us could stop. Every time she sang, it was like she was pushing herself further than before. But it wasn't just a matter of vocal range. It was as if her voice was stretching beyond the limits of what a human could do. I could hear the power, but there was something else in the sound. It wasn't just pitch perfect. It wasn't just flawless. It was unnatural. I had always admired her talent, but now I was starting to feel fear instead of admiration. I first noticed a shift in the middle of a session. She was performing one of her warm-up exercises, a simple melody she had sung hundreds of times before. But this time, when she hit the highest note, the sound was different, off in a way I couldn't explain. It wasn't the usual control and precision. There was something raw about it, almost primal, as if something inside her was fighting to get out. The air grew thick around us, like it was charged with energy. The lights flickered slightly, and for just a moment, I felt cold, as though a chill had swept through the room. I didn't want to believe it, but it felt as though her voice wasn't just her own. Something else was slipping through, something I couldn't understand. I tried to stop her, to ask her to take a break, but when I looked at her, it was like I was talking to a stranger. She didn't seem like Beyoncé anymore. Her eyes were unfocused, distant, as though she wasn't hearing me at all. It was like her body was here, but her mind, her spirit was somewhere else entirely. I took a step back, unsure of what to do. The fear was building inside me, I had never felt anything like this before. There was a deep, overwhelming sense of wrongness hanging in the air, and I couldn't escape it. This wasn't just a vocal issue. This was something bigger, something far darker. And it wasn't just affecting her. It was affecting me, too. She snapped out of the trance-like state a moment later, blinking rapidly as if she had just woken from a deep sleep. "Sorry," she said, her voice sounding a little disoriented. "I must have zoned out for a second." But I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't something simple. It wasn't just fatigue. It wasn't a moment of distraction. There was something much more terrifying at play here. I asked if she was feeling okay, but she brushed it off, said she was fine, and the session continued. But now, I couldn't focus. My mind kept racing back to that moment, to the voice, to the coldness that had swept through the room. The sessions after that only grew more intense. I kept telling myself it was all in my head, that I was imagining things. But the more I worked with her, the more I realized that I wasn't. Whatever was happening to Beyoncé was real. And it wasn't just affecting her. It was taking hold of me, too. I could feel it in my chest, in my bones, as if something was crawling under my skin. There were times when she would sing, and I could feel the room vibrate, not with the power of her voice, but with something else, something much darker. It was like the sound was coming from everywhere, like it was invading the space around us, pressing in on all sides. It wasn't just music anymore. It was a force that was slowly, relentlessly growing stronger. I tried to talk to her about it, but each time she would brush me off. She would laugh it off or tell me that I was just tired. She didn't understand. How could she? She wasn't aware of what was happening. And that was the part that terrified me the most. She didn't know, but I did. I could feel it, the change in her voice, the way it had shifted, the way it was pulling something from deep within her. And each time it happened, I could feel it creeping into the air around us, making everything feel heavier, darker, more threatening. One day, as I sat across from her during a break, I noticed that she wasn't looking at me. She was staring at the floor, her eyes clouded over, distant. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap, but she wasn't moving. She wasn't present. It was as if her body was there, but her mind was somewhere else. I tried to shake her out of it, to get her to focus, but she didn't respond. She didn't even blink. For a moment, I thought I saw something in her eyes, something deep, something otherworldly. And in that split second, I felt the full weight of it. She wasn't just a singer anymore. She wasn't just Beyoncé. She was a vessel. I had no idea what had taken hold of her, but I knew that it was something I couldn't fight. I couldn't stop it. I couldn't even understand it. And that was the moment I realized. The longer I stayed in this, the deeper I would be dragged into it. I was witnessing something far bigger than just a voice. I was witnessing a transformation, one that I couldn't stop, one that I didn't know how to stop. I thought I could control it, that I could help her, but I didn't know how deep this darkness ran. What I didn't realize was that I was about to be dragged into a nightmare beyond my control. By the time we hit the next big performance, I was no longer just her vocal coach. I was terrified. It had gotten worse. The voice, that voice, was more than just an oddity now. It was dominant, in control, slipping through every note. At first it was subtle, something that I could almost explain away, but now it was impossible to ignore. Every time she sang, I could feel it. It wasn't just her voice anymore. It was like a force, something pushing through her, controlling her. But it wasn't just the power. It wasn't just the depth of the voice. There was something else, something wrong. It was like a door that had been cracked open just enough for something to crawl through. But the door was widening, and whatever was coming through was getting stronger by the day. She seemed different too. At first, it was just the occasional blank stare or zoning out during breaks. But then it became something else entirely. She would lose focus, staring into space, eyes vacant, like she wasn't really there. I would try to get her attention, but it was like she was in a trance, her body still present, but her mind lost somewhere far away. I'd shake her out of it, and she'd snap back, almost disoriented. "I'm fine," she'd say, brushing it off. "Just a little tired." But I knew it wasn't fatigue. There was something more. And every time that voice filled the room, I felt a shiver run down my spine. It wasn't her. Whatever was coming out of her mouth didn't belong to her. It was something else, entirely. We had another session before the concert. It was supposed to be a light warm-up, but the moment she started singing, it was different. The air in the room thickened, heavy with a weight I couldn't place. She didn't even seem to notice it, but I felt it like it was pressing on my chest, forcing the breath from my lungs. Her voice filled the room, but there was an undercurrent, a tone that shouldn't have been there. It wasn't just power, it was suffocating. When she hit the high note, it was louder than ever. It felt as if the walls were trembling, like the sound was so intense it might shatter the room. But that wasn't the worst part. As she finished the note, something shifted. It was like she was pulled. Her body jerked, like she was trying to fight it, but whatever was inside her was too strong. I watched, frozen, as her hands twitched at her sides, her eyes widening as if she were trying to stay conscious, but losing the battle. For a moment, she looked like she was struggling, as if she was locked in a fight with something inside her. It was no longer just a shift in her voice, it was in her body. And it terrified me. I stepped forward, hesitant, trying to speak, trying to snap her out of whatever trance she was in. But she didn't hear me. Her head tilted back, her eyes rolling upward as if she were searching for something. And then it happened. A sound, a deep, guttural growl erupted from her throat. It wasn't human. It wasn't even close. I froze, rooted to the spot. This was it. The moment I had been dreading. The moment I realized that whatever this thing inside her was, it wasn't going away. It was taking over. It had already taken control. And Beyoncé herself, was becoming a vessel for something else. "Beyoncé!" I shouted, my voice cracking as I moved towards her. But she didn't move. She didn't respond. She was gone. The voice, that dark, growling sound, filled the room like it was reaching for me, trying to pull me in. It was inhuman, something I had never heard, and something I never wanted to hear again. I tried to grab her shoulder, to shake her, to snap her out of it, but I couldn't touch her. I pulled back, staring at her in horror. Her body was rigid, locked in place, as if held by an unseen force. I had no idea what to do. I thought I was helping her, guiding her to perfect her already unbelievable talent. But this wasn't helping her. This was feeding it. Whatever it was. I backed away slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew I had to stop this. I couldn't let it continue. I couldn't let her continue like this. But what could I do? I wasn't a therapist. I wasn't trained to handle this. I was just a vocal coach. I was supposed to help her sing. But this was something else. Something far beyond my reach. The growl stopped, the room falling into an eerie silence. Beyoncé's body relaxed, her head dropping forward, eyes blinking rapidly. She seemed dazed, confused. I grabbed her shoulders, steadying her, and she looked up at me, her gaze unfocused. "What happened?" she asked softly, her voice back to its usual smooth tone. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." I could barely get the words out. "Beyoncé, you were..." But the words stuck in my throat. What could I say? How could I explain what had just happened? She wouldn't believe me. No one would. And more than that, I wasn't sure I believed it myself. She was fine again, or so it seemed. She apologized again, standing up and stretching, brushing off the moment like it had been nothing. But I could see it in her eyes. She didn't remember. She didn't know what had just happened, what she had just become. She was unaware of the force that had taken over her. And that was the moment I realized I couldn't stay. I couldn't be part of this anymore. I thought leaving would end it, but I was wrong. That was the moment I realized I was already tangled up in something far worse than I could have ever imagined. And it wasn't just her anymore, it was both of us. After the incident in the studio, I tried to walk away. I thought that if I just left, if I could put enough distance between myself and Beyoncé, I'd be able to shake off the terrifying things I had witnessed. I told myself that it was just a one-time fluke, a strange episode, and that it would never happen again. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. The moment I stepped out of that room, I knew it wasn't over. It wasn't just a fluke, it was only just beginning. The truth began to settle in like a cold, unshakable weight on my chest. I couldn't stop thinking about it. What I had seen, what I had felt. It wasn't just her voice that was changing, it was her. It wasn't just about the music anymore. It was something darker, something I wasn't prepared for. She wasn't herself. For days after that, I stayed away from the studio. I tried to convince myself that I could leave it all behind. But every night, when I closed my eyes, I saw her face, her eyes empty as she sang with that voice that wasn't hers. I couldn't forget the look on her face when she was caught in that trance, when whatever it was that had taken control of her had seized her completely. I couldn't escape the memory of that voice, the growl that was so much deeper, darker than anything a human could produce. It was a sound that seemed to come from the very depths of the earth, something ancient and unholy. A part of me wanted to run, to walk away and never look back. But another part of me, something stronger, something more insistent, told me I couldn't just leave this behind. I had to understand it. I had to know what was happening to her. I started digging into the history of her career. I tried to find any clue, anything that might explain the changes I had seen. But the more I searched, the more I realized there was no explanation. There were no reports, no whispers, nothing that would hint at the truth. She was always portrayed as the perfect, unstoppable superstar, and no one seemed to know anything about the dark force I had witnessed. The deeper I dug, the more I realized that Beyoncé was never just an artist. She wasn't just a woman who had worked hard to get where she was. She had been chosen to carry something that didn't belong in a human body. The more I thought about it, the more everything started to make sense. She wasn't just a vessel for her talent. She was a vessel for something much darker, something ancient. I found the answer one night, alone in my apartment. I couldn't sleep, couldn't stop thinking about what I had seen. I decided to look into her family, her roots, anything that might give me some insight. And that's when I stumbled upon an old, barely traceable article buried deep in a music magazine archive. It was about a series of unexplained events during her early years in the industry. There were rumors, vague whispers of something else inside her, something she couldn't control, something she had been forced to carry. I read through the article, my heart pounding. It talked about her childhood, how she had always been different, how she had always been chosen. It was said that her gift, her voice, wasn't entirely her own, that it was passed down, generation to generation, a curse that had waited for the right person, the right vessel, to take it on. Beyoncé wasn't just a star. She had been born to carry something otherworldly. And her voice, it wasn't just a gift. It was a conduit, a way for whatever had taken hold of her to speak. I felt a chill run down my spine as I read the words. This wasn't just about music. This was a curse that had waited for her. The deeper I looked into her past, the more I realized how much of this was hidden. I found mentions of old rituals, whispered legends about the chosen ones who would carry the voice of an ancient being. They weren't just stories, they were real. And Beyoncé was the latest in a long line of those who had been marked. I couldn't stop shaking as I pieced the story together. The things I had seen, the moments when Beyoncé seemed to lose herself, they were signs of this force, this entity, fighting to come through. It wasn't just a voice anymore. It was alive. It had a purpose. It was using her, and she had no idea. But I did. And now, I was trapped in it. I wasn't just witnessing it. I had been a part of it from the beginning. I had helped feed it. Every session, every note she sang had strengthened it. I had played a part in helping this entity break free. And now, I couldn't escape. I knew that I couldn't just walk away. Not anymore. The truth had sunk its claws into me, and there was no turning back. Whatever was inside her wasn't just in her. It was in all of us. I had been a witness, but now I was entangled in something much bigger, something far more terrifying than I could ever have imagined. As I sat there, overwhelmed by what I had uncovered, I realized something else. The voice that had taken over Beyoncé. It wasn't done yet. It was only just beginning. And now, it was coming for me. I thought I could leave it all behind. But what I didn't realize was that the moment I uncovered the truth, I was already in too deep. And what I was about to learn was far worse than I could ever have imagined. I couldn't outrun it anymore. The knowledge of what was happening to Beyoncé, what had been happening to her for years, had finally consumed me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, her eyes vacant and distant as the voice took over. I tried to ignore it, tried to pretend it was just a bad dream, but it wasn't. It was real, and worse, it was getting stronger. I could no longer be a passive observer. I was part of this now, trapped in it. Every moment I spent away from the studio was just another moment I spent trying to push the truth down, but it kept bubbling to the surface. It had become an obsession. I couldn't escape it. The worst part, I couldn't help her. She didn't know what was happening. She didn't know what she was becoming. And I couldn't tell her. If I did, she'd never believe me. No one would. I had seen it all, felt it all, and still I didn't know how to stop it. I showed up at the studio one night, hoping to talk to her, to figure out if there was any way I could help. But when I walked in, the air was thick with something unnatural. The lights flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. There was a low hum in the background, like an energy I couldn't place. It felt like the entire room was alive, pulsing with a dark force I couldn't control. Beyoncé was sitting at the piano, her back to me. She didn't even turn when I walked in. I called her name, but there was no response. I took a few steps closer, my heart pounding in my chest. When I reached her, I saw her hands shaking, barely touching the keys. She didn't look up. Her body was tense, but her eyes were glazed, unfocused. "Beyoncé?" I asked again, my voice cracking as I stepped closer. "Are you okay?" Her head snapped up, her eyes locking onto mine. For a split second, they were hers again, sharp, focused, full of life. But then it happened. The flicker, the change. It was so fast, I almost missed it. Her eyes darkened, like a shadow had passed over them. She blinked, and in that instant, she wasn't herself anymore. The voice came out of her deep and guttural, like something was clawing its way to the surface. It wasn't Beyoncé's voice. It wasn't even close. It was the same voice I'd heard before, the one that had haunted my dreams. But now, it was stronger, more powerful. It didn't just fill the room, it consumed it. I stepped back, horrified. The sound that came out of her was no longer contained. It was ripping through the air like it was trying to break free. I tried to speak, but no words came out. My throat was tight. My legs felt like they were going to give out. I had seen her sing before, but this was something else. This wasn't her. This was something taking over. "Stop," I finally managed to shout. But she didn't hear me. She couldn't hear me. Her body jerked as if the voice was fighting to take control. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew it wasn't good. Whatever was inside her wasn't going to let her go. I couldn't just stand there. I couldn't let her keep singing like that, let that thing take over her. I reached out, my hands shaking, trying to stop her. But as soon as I touched her, I felt it. A coldness, an energy I couldn't explain. Her skin was ice cold. The force inside her was too strong. I couldn't break through it. I couldn't reach her. I stepped back again, gasping for air. The voice that came from her now wasn't just a sound. It was a presence, something that reached into the depths of my mind, making it impossible to think straight. It was suffocating. I could feel my heart racing in my chest, but I couldn't make myself move. And then, just as quickly as it had started, the voice stopped. The room fell silent, the oppressive weight lifting for just a moment. Beyoncé sat there, still, like she hadn't just been consumed by something else. Her hands dropped from the piano keys, and she looked at me, confused. What happened?" she asked softly, blinking rapidly as if waking from a trance. She looked around, trying to make sense of the silence. I stared at her, unable to speak. I didn't know what to say. How could I explain what had just happened? How could I make her understand what she had become? She wasn't the same person anymore. She hadn't been for a long time. I wanted to tell her. I wanted to scream the truth at her, to make her see what was happening. But I couldn't. I didn't know how. She wouldn't believe me. And if I told her, I would lose her forever. She would never be the same. So I said nothing. I just stood there, watching her as the reality of what had happened, what was happening, settled over me. Whatever this force was, it wasn't done with her, and it wasn't done with me. The worst part, I couldn't run from it anymore. I was already too deep, and it was coming for us both. I thought I could walk away from it. I thought I could close the door and leave everything behind. But the truth was, I was never really free. It followed me. The memories of Beyoncé, her voice, that thing inside her, they kept coming back. I tried to push it down, tried to convince myself it wasn't real. But the more I ignored it, the more it consumed me. And now, I had no choice but to face it. The moment I stepped back into the studio, everything felt off. I could feel it in my bones. The air was thick with tension, heavy with something I couldn't name. It was darker now, more intense. I had hoped that maybe I could just show up and pretend nothing had happened, that everything would be normal. But it wasn't. It never would be again. Beyoncé was there, as she always was, standing near the microphone, her eyes sharp and focused as she prepared for another session. She looked like herself, but I knew better. Something was different. Something had shifted in her. It wasn't just the voice anymore. It was her. She wasn't just a vessel for that dark force. She was becoming it. She turned to face me as I entered the room. "You're here early," she said, a slight smile playing on her lips as if nothing had changed. But I could see the distance in her eyes. It was subtle, but it was there. She didn't seem fully present, like there was something holding her back, keeping her tethered to a place I couldn't follow. I didn't know how to say what I needed to say. The words felt like they were stuck in my throat. I wanted to tell her what was happening. I wanted to scream the truth at her. But I was afraid. Afraid of what would happen if I did. Afraid of what it might mean for both of us. "Beyoncé," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "I need to tell you something. Something important." She looked at me, her eyes narrowing, but she didn't say anything. The silence between us felt heavy, suffocating. I could feel the weight of everything that had happened, everything that I had witnessed. It was like a storm brewing inside me, and I couldn't hold it in any longer. "I don't think you realize what's happening," I said, my voice more urgent now. You're not just a singer. You're a vessel. Something has taken control of you. It's been using you, using your voice." She blinked, but there was no sign of shock, no recognition in her eyes. She just stood there, her face blank, like she hadn't heard me at all. "It's inside you, Beyoncé," I continued, my words tumbling out in a rush. "This thing, this darkness, it's been using your voice for its own purposes. You're carrying it, and you don't even know it." For a moment, she was silent, her gaze distant. It was like she wasn't even listening, like she was trapped in some kind of trance. I could see her struggling to understand, but it wasn't making sense to her. How could it? How could anyone believe what I was telling her? No one would. "Stop," she finally said, her voice flat. This isn't funny. I know things have been a little off lately, but you're overthinking it. I'm just tired, okay? I stared at her, feeling my heart break. She didn't get it. She didn't understand. I thought about all the times I had seen her slip away, the moments when she had lost herself. The voice, the growl, the power, the darkness. It was all real, but she couldn't see it. She wouldn't. I'm not overthinking it, I said quietly. You're not just tired. Something's happening to you. Something that's getting stronger. You're not just a star. You're chosen. She didn't respond. She just looked at me, her eyes empty, like she had shut herself off from the world. I couldn't get through to her. I couldn't make her understand. I know you don't believe me, I whispered, my throat tightening. But I've seen it. I've heard it. And I can't keep pretending that everything is okay. You have to know the truth. You have to know what you've become. There was no answer, no response. It was like the words had fallen into an abyss. I turned and walked away. I couldn't stay there any longer. I had to leave. I had to get away from it, from her. The truth was too much for me to carry, and I couldn't bear to watch her slip further away, deeper into something that wasn't even her. As I left the studio, the weight of everything I had seen pressed down on me. I had tried to warn her, tried to make her see what was happening, but it was too late. The darkness had already taken root, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I had tried to run, tried to hide from the truth, but now I knew the hardest part. It wasn't over. It would never be over. Final payoff. The truth is, I never really escaped. Walking away from Beyoncé didn't free me. The darkness that took over her, it took over me too. It followed me, a shadow that never left, lurking behind every thought, every quiet moment. I thought I could forget, but I was wrong. The force inside her had already sunk its claws deep into both of us. I thought I had seen the worst, but the worst was yet to come. The voice, that voice, it wasn't done yet. It had only just begun to scratch the surface. Beyoncé wasn't the only one who had been chosen. The moment I stepped into her world, I had become a part of it. A part of something far darker, something far more terrifying than I ever could have imagined. And now, I don't know what's worse. The fact that I helped unleash it, or the fact that it's still waiting, growing stronger, closer.